But joining us now in the Element Wealth Studios, Mike Hurst, former U.S. Attorney. Mike, good to see you.
Hey, good morning, Gerard. How are you?
Doing great. Just wanted to give you a bit of a shout out. You were kind enough to address my Rotary Club yesterday.
Yeah, I told Paul they must have been having a hard time finding somebody to speak, so happy to fill in.
Paul Bowers, our president, of course, and you did a great job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed the. Sometimes it's just good. So what you really did well there, I just want you to know, Mike, is that you didn't just take us down the rat hole of law, which you could because you're a very skilled attorney, obviously. But you provided, I thought, were some good advice on just how to conduct yourself, not only as a lawyer, but as a person, and mainly how to interact with people.
That's right.
Gosh.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something to talk about. I mean, it's an intimidating group. I mean, it's the business leaders of our capital city. Mm-hmm. I mean, like Rhino said, it's the movers and shakers here in Jackson metro area, and we former federal prosecutors. We don't have much, but we do have some pretty good stories.
No doubt.
Pretty fun stories. So we just I tried to take those old war stories we had, try to pull out or tease out the life lessons and just try to apply them to the business community and like you said, to our life in general. So
no doubt
I hope
about
it was helpful.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so speaking of the capital city, where we sit here, we got a crime problem here.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's deja vu all over again. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, and I feel like every time I come over here, I'm the boy who cried wolf because we do have a crime problem. Today is July 26th. Today is the 207th day of this fine year in 2022, and we're, according to WLBT, we're already up to 70 murders, which puts us on pace to hit about 123, which, you know, in the right context, if you're going to be an optimistic person, glass half full, I mean, that is lower than last year. It is lower than the year before, but goodness, Gerard, that still puts us in the top 3 deadliest years in the city's history. I mean, this is insane. So, you know, I don't know if some of your listeners may have seen the CBS News report last month on the moms of murder victims here in the city of Jackson. If you haven't seen that, I don't normally recommend to go look at CBS News, but in this case, they interviewed a number of mothers of crime victims, specifically murder victims. And it's some of the most heartbreaking stuff you'll ever watch. I mean, one mother was told by a JPD officer that she needed to go investigate her son's own murder.
Oh, my gosh.
And it documented how, you know, the city talks about the solvability rate that they have on murders is, you know, 60%. But, you know, the Atlantic Monthly magazine did an article the other day that said that back in the 1960s, the nation's solvability rate for murders was 90%. And now we're down to only solving in Jackson 6 murders per 10 murders. I mean, that's a lot of people whose families never have closure, who never have any type of solace as to what happened to their loved one. So,
do you feel that's a function of just unwillingness to investigate or lack of resources?
Absolutely not unwillingness. I know these Jackson police officers. I know these detectives. I think it's a lack of resources, and frankly, it's a lack of leadership in the city. I mean, I've said this many a times. I'm sure I'm not on the Christmas card list of the mayors anymore, but, I mean, when you don't have leadership at the top, when you don't have someone who is making executive decisions about a city, and specifically in this case about a police department, or that is making decisions that, you know, adversely impact the police officers, you've got some of the lowest morale that I've ever seen in any organization, not just a law enforcement organization, any organization. So, you know, they're doing the best they can, and they're out there. These police officers, they're in it because to them it's a calling. To them, this is not just a job. This is not just a paycheck. You know, they could go to any law enforcement agency in the surrounding counties to get more money.
Sure.
This is because they love our capital city, just like you and I love our capital city. They want to make Jackson better. But if they don't have the backing of the mayor, if they don't have the resources, if they don't have the manpower, when we're supposed to have over 600 officers, and I think we're down to like 250. I mean, how can we expect these individuals to do their job well if the mayor does not give them the tools and the resources they need to do it? I mean, one example, the FBI, I read this, the FBI says that a homicide detective should have only about 5 cases that they investigate per year. Okay? The last numbers I saw, and I don't know if this is even accurate, but the last numbers I saw was Jackson has 8 homicide detectives. I don't think they have that many, but that was what was reported, 8 homicide detectives. And if you divide, 150 murders, 140 murders, whatever it's going to be, by 8 homicide detectives, that's a heck of a lot more than 5 cases per year.
Impossible.
And I don't know how we should. How can we hold them up to that standard? How can we expect them to do their jobs if we don't have the manpower in place to get the job done? So
yeah, well, so it's the old catch-22. We've been talking about that on the program, Mike, the last few days. What do we need to do in Mississippi to boost our economy, and what can we do to be more business-friendly, to support and promote organic growth,
right?
Existing businesses, of course, expanding, investing, but also to attract businesses in. So the issue is we need those businesses to come in to produce more economic activity and more revenue to our cities, our state, to be able to invest in these resources, but we also need it to be crime-free to get them to come here.
That's right. Well,
it's a conundrum.
And the irony is, if you go back and look at Mayor Lumumba's campaign platform and his campaign, if you go back and pull all the internet posts, all the advertising, the number one issue for him, ironically, was crime when he ran.
Sure. And
since he's been in office, I feel like he's almost done the opposite. I don't feel like he's done really much to, reduce crime at all. In fact, I think the policies that he's put in place, whether it's preventing Jackson police officers from pursuing criminals, or whether it's requiring the publication of a police officer's name after there's been an officer-involved shooting within 72 hours, without regard from whether there was due process or any type of protections for the officer and his family, those types of policies that he is doing for the woke crowd outside the city of Jackson, for his liberal base outside the state of Mississippi, so he can move his name up the ladder, if you will. Yeah. I mean, those are doing nothing, absolutely nothing to help the citizens of Jackson or to make Jackson safer.
Well, it seems like that, I'll go ahead and say, he's over his head.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, even in his inner circle, would tell you that. But why do we seem to not be able to get someone to run for mayor that is more qualified, that truly can address these issues? And I'd say this as well, Mike, and I think you would agree, that it's easy for us who don't live in the capital city, who are somewhat isolated from the problems there, to just say, okay, well, that's just Jackson. But the fact is, it's the capital city. It drags the whole state down.
Yeah.
Drags us all down.
And the whole narrative about you don't live here, you can't have any say. The problem with that narrative is that I spend a third of my life here.
Yeah.
I work in the city of Jackson, probably spend more than a third of my life because I work here more than 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
But this is not just something for people who live there, something for people who work here. This is our capital city. This is the center of our state. This is the hub of our government. This should be the center of our commerce, like you said. We should have businesses coming here left and right.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, we've got to help the citizens of Jackson because the government is not helping them.
Yeah.
We've got to step in, our nonprofits, our churches, and they are. I will tell you, I've seen some amazing nonprofits pop up over the last few years to come into Jackson to help its residents, to help where it's needed, and that's really encouraging. That's really encouraging to see what's going on, especially in South and West Jackson with some of these groups and what they're doing. But we've just got to do more. And when we get out of that mindset that the government's going to do it for us and that we've got to do it for ourselves, I think we can move Jackson forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wanted to share that I was fortunate to attend the Mississippi District Pentecostal Church's annual camp meeting. I went last Friday.
I love those folks. They are fired up, man.
Unbelievable. And when we come back, I wanted to – can you stay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, we got Mike Hurst. When we come back, I'll share with you something that they presented at the meeting that really caught my attention as it relates to Jackson.
Great.
We'll be right back with Mike Hurst in the Element Wealth Studios. Mike Hurst, former U.S. attorney, and now a partner at Phelps Dunbar.
That's correct.
Yep. Practicing law, raising a family.
Yeah.
Beautiful family.
Trying to save up for all those weddings I've got to pay for.
I heard
college
you talk
funds.
about that yesterday. I get it. All right, so we're in the Element Wealth Studios talking about the crime situation and how to address it in our capital city. And there are a lot of ideas, of course, but The bottom line is we need resources. So someone said that we need to pay law enforcement more. And I hear you.
Yep.
But you have to have the courage to cut elsewhere, because fundamental problem in Jackson is they ain't got no money.
Right. Losing
tax base, as you know. So revenue is hard to come by and insufficient, frankly, to support the city at the level it needs to be supported. So where do you cut elsewhere? And, if it were me, it seems like I still believe, as I know you do, and I was talking about the Pentecostal church, and I'll get back to that in a second. This is not a problem that is going to be solved by government. It's certainly not exclusively by government. It requires the private sector. I think it requires the religious community as well. It requires all of us to get involved. Would work miracles. We could see miracles work if we could really attract some serious private sector operations in the city. How do you do that? I think we got to go with hat in hand, honestly, to some of these corporations that have the means, have the assets to expand into the city and say, we need you. You're already so deadgum focused on all this ESG stuff and all this social warrior efforts. Come help the city of Jackson. I'd get on a plane right now and go with hat in hand.
Right.
We got problems. We need you. That's an example. The Pentecostal church, just quickly, they did a great presentation. The Bishop Tipton did, about some plans they have for the camp and so forth. But he put up there a slide that showed 8 communities in the city where they want to expand, build churches, literally churches in those communities. Top of the list, Central Jackson.
Oh, wow.
They got great congregations and churches, as you know, in Madison and south of Jackson and Byram.
In Flowood.
Flowood, right. Central Jackson. And it's not just because they want to expand the size of the church. It's because they want to get in there and they believe if they could get people in the church community, they stop using drugs, stop being in gangs, stop committing crime. I'm with them. That's the way to do it.
Right. Well, and I will tell you, when I was U.S. Attorney, I would go on ride-alongs with police officers, with council members, and I remember very vividly sitting at a kitchen table with a grandmother who was raising, I want to say 4 or 5, maybe 6 grandkids. And, she's been there her entire life. She was not leaving. This was her home. There was nowhere else to go, frankly. And, just the lack of hope in some of these individuals who cannot escape. I mean, those are the people that we need to be doing everything we can to make sure that they have some hope, that there is something. And to your point we absolutely need more police officers. We absolutely need to pay them more. All of those things are correct. But just like when I was U.S. Attorney, our main job in the United States Attorney's Office is to prosecute federal crimes. But when we launched Project Eject here in Jackson, to really combat violent crime, it was not only prosecute more federal criminals here in the city of Jackson, but it also involved issues of prevention, going into the schools, getting to those kids, giving those kids hope, giving them alternatives, going to the convicted felons who are about to be released, empowering them with the resources and the tools and the education and the job opportunities they need when they get out of prison. Otherwise, they're going to fall right back into what they did before they got there. And really just getting out in the community, having town halls, raising awareness, just anything we can do to raise transparency, have more communications, build that trust. I mean, I think that's what we've lost is the trust piece between the community and we in law enforcement.
No doubt.
And so it can't be just arresting and prosecuting. It's got to be a multifaceted, approach, and that's what we tried to do with Project Eject. And I will tell you, I mean, the media did not like to report on it. They did not like what we did, but at the end of the day, the numbers don't lie. I mean, the violent crime in the city of Jackson fell when we implemented Project Eject. Yep. And it just goes to show you, if you bring together all those components, not just federal, state, local law enforcement, but when you bring in the educational, the charitable, the humanitarian, the civic, all those organizations together, man, we can actually do this. We can actually accomplish this. We can actually make Jackson safer. But the thing that infuriates me is back to the mayor, at first he was all on board, but then he saw that we were being successful. And he didn't. I guess he didn't like the fact that a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney was actually doing things to help Jackson. Maybe it hurts his politics. I don't know. But in 2020, when we were all going through COVID, when violent crime was not only spiking around the country, but was spiking here in our Jackson, our capital city, where I think we had 130 murders at the end of that year, I offered to bring DOJ resources into the city of Jackson through Operation Legend. I offered to bring 50 federal law enforcement agents. FBI, ATF, DEA, you name it, U.S. Marshals, bring them into the city of Jackson to help with this surge of crime that we were experiencing. And I was told absolutely not by the mayor.
Unbelievable.
Every city councilman, from Kenny Stokes to Aaron Banks to every Democrat, Republican, white, black, they were all in favor of it, Gerard. But for whatever reason, this mayor wanted to politicize it, call it the militarization of Jackson, which is the craziest thing you can imagine when mayors in Kansas City, mayors in all these other Democratic-controlled cities were accepting them, and they were seeing their violent crime go down in their cities, yet our mayor refused that help.
I vividly remember that, and that's just another situation where a person that is in a position of leadership, especially at the top, they've got to take a back seat and be confident enough in their own skin that, hey, bringing in people that are better at something, smarter at something than I am to solve a problem, to work together as a team, that benefits everybody.
Right.
That doesn't reflect poorly on me, but it's almost like that was the concern there. This may look like that, right, that I'm not getting the job done. We got to bring outsiders in.
What did Reagan say? There's no limit to what a man can accomplish if he doesn't care who gets the credit.
It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit.
That's right.
Exactly. I think first stated by Harry Truman, and I think it was Reagan that picked up on it, but it had kind of gone away.
Probably one of them said it.
Who knows? But it doesn't really matter. It's a fantastic quote, and it's a principle by which to live.
Yeah, I mean, we all have we should have all the same goal in mind, which is to make our capital city better, to make people safer. Again, back to the politics, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. It doesn't matter if you're black or white. At the end of the day, we as human beings want our kids to be safe. We want our grandkids to be safe. We want to live in a safe area. We want them to be able to play on the sidewalk. We want them to be able to go to the grocery store or go to the Sonic down the street, whatever, without the fear of something bad happening to them. And sadly, right now, it's hard to say that in our capital city.
Yeah, we don't have that.
When you got 5-year-olds and 14-year-olds getting shot, while they're in their apartment or getting shot at the gas station, I mean, it is scary for people not only living but visiting our capital city.
It's dragging us all down. Something else that is also a sticky subject that I from an economic perspective, that I'd like to see happen is to improve and renovate our airport. I know in flying people in from all over the country, when I was in business here, I always felt like I needed to apologize for it, because you could see it in their eyes like, wow, this is maybe the worst one in the country. And that's been a subject, as you know, of very hot debate between the city and members of the legislature. And
well, I hope you blindfolded your customers when you got to the Jackson City potholes, or maybe the bottled water you had to give them when you got to Jackson. I mean, that's the problem. Crime is first. In my mind, crime is first and foremost. You can't. I don't think many of those businesses, and you're the expert on this, but I don't think many businesses or companies want to come to Jackson because of the crime problem.
Right.
So you've got a kind of a chicken and egg scenario. So we've got to get this crime problem fixed first and foremost, and then let's talk about the sewage. Then let's talk about the water. Then let's talk about the garbage. I mean, there's so many issues, but again, with the right mindset, the right leadership, I really truly, I don't think I'm being Pollyannish. I think we can actually do this.
I do too, and I think it was there was a deal on the table. You got to go?
No,
can you hang on? We got a couple of other things to talk. There was a deal on the table, I want to say, to maybe use the jail downtown. Do you know about that?
No.
I think Lieutenant Governor Hoseman said something to me about it, and I think the state was going to provide a little dab of money, but the city rejected it because they said they couldn't get the people to man the facility, so we don't have a place to lock up people.
What does it tell you when Kenny Stokes said we need a jail?
Oh, exactly.
That tells you we've got a crime problem right there.
No doubt about it. We got Mike Hurst, former U.S. Attorney, in the Element Well Studios. We're going to take a break here and come right back. So, Rhino, a friend texted me and said that one advantage of listening to our show is we have better than average bumper music.
I was just thinking that. I was like, Rhino, this music is phenomenal. You ought to do this for a living, Rhino.
Speaking of which, Mr. Hurst, we got some folks on the C Spire text line that seem to be trying to coax you into running for mayor of the capital city of Jackson.
Well, that's very kind of you all, but I live in the wonderful community of Sand Hill, Mississippi, rural Rankin County. I don't have any neighbors anywhere near me, and I'm enjoying life in the country. So thank you, though.
But you, as you are, can still be effective, even not as the mayor. But we got to get somebody that'll listen, though, Mike. That's the mainmost thing.
Yeah, I think we're on the, for so long our state has been divided among race. And I think we're at the point now that, especially with the crime issues, crime does not distinguish between race. Crime, as I told you, sitting in that kitchen table with that grandmother, I mean, that could have been my grandmother.
Sure.
That could have been me. I used to stay at my grandmother's a lot. Those grandmothers, those moms, those dads, they just want their families to be safe. And it doesn't have anything to do with race. Crime shouldn't have anything to do with race.
Or political affiliation.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And so I think, I'm incredibly proud at how well our state has progressed over the years. I mean, we do have an ugly history, but at the same time, when I go to South Jackson, I go to West Jackson, and I'm helping, our friends in that community. I'm helping others in that community. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't feel like they see race as much anymore, and I know I don't see race like growing up in the 1970s and the 80s. So to me, it's very hopeful because my kids don't see that either. My kids don't have that experience of what our grandparents, our great grandparents went through, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yes,
that's a wonderful thing that just to give you an example, we were at the Shelby County Fair Sunday night, and they had a worship service Sunday night called United Worship. It was one God, one praise, one people. Okay. And it was Choctaws, it was African Americans, it was white, Hispanic. I mean, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. It was kind of like, what you were talking about earlier, the Pentecostal camps. Those meetings, I've been to those. It's incredible. And I tell people, this is what heaven looks like, guys.
Yes. This
is what heaven looks like. We're all from the same blood. We're all created by the same Creator, and that's my hope for our state. I hope we continue to move in that direction where we all become one people and we become one Mississippi.
Yeah, I totally agree. I just feel like that we've broken through a lot of these past barriers and obstacles that. Still, though, outsiders want to hang those around our neck, don't they? And label us as that.
And look, I'm not saying there aren't races. There are races. There are white races. There are black races. There's every racist you can think of. But at the end of the day, I think a super majority of the people in this state love one another.
I agree.
And I think they want to live together, and I think they want to worship together, and I think they want to work together. And at the end of the day, I think our state is better for that. So
I totally agree. But we've got to approach these issues with an open mind.
Absolutely.
Check our pride at the door.
Absolutely.
And be willing to entertain analysis and input and counsel from people who can help.
That's right.
And let's devise a solution, a workable solution we can all get behind and then go execute. It's just simple as that.
And again, I hate to keep going back to my time as U.S. Attorney, but that was why one of the four pillars of Project EJEC was so important to me was the public awareness piece. I did not want to dictate from the ivory towers of the federal courthouse here in Jackson how we were going to fix the crime problem. Rather, one of the pillars was going out in the community, holding town halls, many of which were, frankly, just hijacked by political operatives. But at the same time, some of the best information, some of the best ideas, and I'm not just saying that, some of the best ideas that we used to change Project EJEC came from individuals who were living in West Jackson and South Jackson and living this experience. And otherwise, if we had not gone out there and listened, if we had not gone out there and solicited, if we had not done what we did in trying to raise awareness, increase communication, be more transparent, we wouldn't have gotten better, and I don't think it would have been as successful.
Sure.
So we've got to do that. We've got to do more of that.
Well, hopefully we'll start moving forward. You made a good point about Councilman Stokes, though.
Yeah.
When he's speaking up like that.
Well, and I'll tell you, Gerard, I mean, I might get some criticism from my Republican friends, but Councilman Stokes was one of our biggest advocates when I was doing Project Eject. I mean, he would bring in members from his ward or his area, and we would meet with them. I never turned down a meeting with Councilman Stokes. I went on ride-alongs.
Sure.
With probably at the risk of my safety going on ride-alongs with Councilman Stokes, but at the end of the day, he cared just as much about his people as I did about the 2 million people that I had responsibility for as U.S. Attorney.
I completely agree with you on that. I've been to many, many city council meetings as a vendor to the city. And I've watched him in action, and he's actually a very practical person.
Right.
He's a colorful character.
I
He's a
completely disagree with his previous statements years ago about encouraging constituents to throw rocks and bottles and things at police officers. That's the most outlandish and just insightful nonsense that I've ever heard, and I completely disagree with that. But at the end of the day, he wants his constituents to be safe as well. He wants crime to be lower in that beat as well. So.
I agree. Let's pivot for a second here. This reversal of Roe v. Wade through the ruling handed down by the Supreme Court on the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Care Clinic, of course, has
Hallelujah.
It's been a big deal here.
Never thought I'd see that in my lifetime.
Agree. Originated in the state. What's next from a legal perspective that you can tell us about?
I think what's next is it will be in the states. I think a lot of your listeners probably know this already, but the states will start to legislate on this. And you'll have states like California that pretty much abortion on demand if they want it. And you have states like Mississippi that I think rightly so, we have respect for life. And whether that life is in the womb or outside the womb, we want to protect that life. And so really, I think it rights a wrong that the Roe decision from a legal standpoint, from a lawyer standpoint, even if you were in favor of abortion, and I am absolutely opposed to it, but even if you were in favor of it, I don't think you could have justified or defended the Roe v. Wade original decision just because it was so outside the mainstream of legal reasoning and legal justification. I mean, it was just made up. The justices just absolutely made up a right to abortion in the Constitution. And so, Justice Alito's decision is, when it comes to just legal reasoning and legal writing, it's straight up. This is what the Constitution says. This is what it allows, and abortion is not a right. Yeah, it's something that the founders intended. I think they really intended for the states to have more authority, to have more autonomy. For we as Republicans, we as conservatives believe that the best type of government is the government closest to us. Sure, and so we should be saying that the states should be legislating something like this. And so. Again, I just many prayers personally to have this happen and to just be able to be here, part of the state, the leadership of the state, and to see it happen. I'm very proud to be a Mississippian and to have a first row watching this come down. Yeah. It's an incredible deal. I'm with you. I never thought we would have seen it either. It just kind of the stars aligned perfectly. Before you go, adoption laws in the state of Mississippi need reform. Yeah, I don't know about adoption laws, so I'm the last person you need to ask about that. But from a practical standpoint, from an anecdotal standpoint, I have a lot of friends who've adopted. It needs to be easier. It needs to be less expensive. Yep. We need to make, if we're going to outlaw abortion in the state, we need to give alternatives to women who don't want to have a baby. Sure. If they have to have a baby now, we need to make sure that those individuals who want babies can adopt easily, and those babies can be safe. And that's the point. Absolutely. We've got to cut some of the red tape out and make it more affordable. There are some tax credits available, but still, I'm hearing anecdotally $30,000-$40,000 to go through an adoption process. Yeah, that's probably the anecdotes I hear as well. And let me just get a shout out to our Centers for Pregnancy Choices. I've been a donor and I've been a supporter of them for many, many years, and I cannot tell you enough about the good things that they do. If you haven't had an opportunity, especially the CPC here in Jackson, go to their website, look at these videos they've made of these mothers that have chosen to save their babies. And I'm getting chills just talking about it here in the studio, but watch those videos. If you don't cry, you don't have a heart. Yeah. Because these women talking about these young children now that they chose to keep that baby, it's breathtaking. It's really inspiring.
I agree. And while we were sitting here, I got a text a few minutes ago from the Center for Pregnancy Choices locally.
Great.
I've been a monthly donor to that organization, and they've got a banquet coming up. They just called.
Wonderful. Well, I encourage everyone to donate. We need to step up and help out these pregnant women. If we're gonna stick to our guns and we need to help others, this is what we need to be doing.
I totally agree. Mike, always good to see you, my friend. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for the invite.
Mike Hurst, former U.S. Attorney, has been our guest here on Middays. We'll take a break.